Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Roadmaster 12-volt outlet kit rated at 20 amps on a 2023 Jeep Gladiator. Installation of a 12-volt outlet is super easy. You're essentially just going to be running the outlet inside the vehicle so you can get constant power even when the vehicle is in flat tow mode. So for our instance, this works really well with a portable braking system. So really all we're going to do is take the wires from that outlet, run it through the firewall, and we are going to be extending our wires to get to the battery, but we just tie off the positive terminal and the other wire goes to a ground, and then you'll have that constant 12-volt power even in that flat tow mode. A lot of times in this kit, people will use the fuse tap, which also works pretty well. You already have a spade connector, and it does come with a clip to allow you to do that, but we've found that most of the times we want to get this specifically to the battery, not off of fuses, because when some vehicles are in flat tow mode, it cuts power to a lot of different auxiliary electronics, and so going directly off the battery means that it's always going to have that power, and when it comes to our braking system, that's what we're going to be doing. So most times we end up cutting off those ends and putting ring terminals, and that's what we're going to do for this installation. Your 12-volt outlet kit is super easy to get installed. We may need to extend the wires, but we have the hole open on our firewall, and there's going to be this mount that allows you to have this to at least hold it in place when you're normally driving, and then when you pull it out, you're able to kind of move this around to be able to plug in your braking system. But before we pass this in, we need to make sure that we get this slid over it. So just have the teeth facing towards the outlet, and you'll see it just kind of slides on there. It might be a little tight, but that'll hold it in. And then with our fuse and our ground wire, we'll just pass this up into the firewall, and then we can also pass down our breakaway cable. With the 12-volt outlet wires passed through, this would be a good time to grab that grommet, that plastic one, and you're going to want to drill it out enough to where the fuse can fit through there. If you want to, since we are probably going to extend these wires to reach the battery, you could cut this, just make sure you keep track of which one's which. But you'd slide that grommet over, and then also make sure that you have your breakaway switch to be able to pass that through, so you'll have the grommet so it'll be nice and clean. I still have my pull wire attached to our breakaway switch, so I'm going to just route this, and you can just follow along. There's some factory wire loom that's kind of zip tied up. If you follow along with that and zip tie it, it makes for a nice clean run to where you really can't even see it before passing it through the grommet and into the firewall. The braking system does have a decent amount of length to be able to plug into our 12-volt outlet, so it's really up to you what you want to do. If you want to be able to pull this out and have this a little bit more mobile, you're just going to want to make sure that you give yourself a little bit of extra slack. Just make sure you're doing that. But if you're just going to mount it up and have that in a spot to where you're going to use the cable from the braking system to plug it in, pretty easy. We're going to grab this mount and use the self-tapping screws included with the 12-volt outlet kit, and we're going to just drill that into the plastic on a nice spot on the footwell. I recommend sitting in the Jeep and making sure it's not going to be in the way of where you might rest your foot or become any inconvenience while normally driving. Now, I've done quite a few of these outlet kits on Jeeps, whether it be a Gladiator or Wrangler, and I found that if you kind of put it along this groove, it's nice because as you plug in the braking system, you just follow along and it'll kind of give it a straight shot into here. So I'll just get that lined up, and then we'll get these mounted in place. Now, with the slack pulled out from the 12-volt outlet, you can see this barely reaches the battery, and this is not a clean run. So we are going to need to extend this. No big deal. You can pick up extra wire here, just kind of match the gauge to the wiring on our 12-volt outlet kit. And we're going to be using heat shrink butt connectors. Those are really nice because once you seal them down, since this engine bay can be exposed to weather, any road, anything that you'd be driving in, you want to make sure your electrical connections are going to be nice and stout. Those heat shrink butt connectors do a good job of sealing that up and making it watertight. So I'm going to cut these and extend these. It's also a good time. This fuse is rather small, so you shouldn't have too big of an issue routing, but if you're cutting the wires to extend them, it's going to make it a lot easier to get a nice clean run, and you can run it exactly how you want. So I'll grab my wire and my butt connectors and we'll get this extended. And I found that roughly about 5 foot of extra wire should be enough to cover both of ours to extend it to the battery. So if you are picking up that extra wire, that's probably what I would go. You can grab a little extra if you need to, but I think 5 foot should do it. So I'll just strip this back on both ends. And with our extra wire, I'll strip that back as well. And then these are our heat shrink butt connectors, and they just crimp on like normal butt connectors. So do that first. And twisting your wires will be a great way to make sure that you can feed them in properly, but also it'll bite down on the wires a little bit better when you go to crimp them. And then we'll take our heat gun and we'll just shrink this down. And to make it easier to route these over nice and clean, I'm just going to take some electrical tape. You can also put wire loom on here. Same with any of your electrical connections. If you want to make them look a little bit cleaner, wire loom does a good job of keeping it all contained. So I finished up getting our 12-volt outlet ran. I looped it under and around our fuse box here, and I was able to split the wires off and jump those in with those butt connectors. Now with the ring terminal, I attached our fuse side to the positive on our battery, and then the ground, you have a series of grounds that are on the side here from the factory that you can use. So with the ring terminal, I just crimped that down, put it on this, just a 10 millimeter nut stud, and tighten that down. And now we have that all ran, hooked up to power. So at this point, we can head inside and with our braking system and test to make sure that it's working. We'll just take our 12-volt plug from the braking system. We'll plug this into our new outlet. And we should, if we kick that on, we get the power coming on. I don't have my breakaway switch in here yet because I do want to get this set up, but now's a good time to show you how to get this dialed in to work with your Gladiator. So the feet on the braking system just thread into the bottom, and that's going to allow you to get a little bit of height adjustment. Now, something that a lot of times people will do is you're going to want to pull out your floor mat so it doesn't cause any issue or get hung up on stuff. You can kind of get away with that on these Wranglers. They're snapped in pretty well. The main thing is we get it adjusted to the seat to where there's a little bit of tension, but not enough to put on the brakes. So using this portion that rests against the seat, I like to raise that up to seat height, and then we can move the seat forward. And you don't want it constantly pushing on the pedal. A little bit of play is okay. And as far as the clamp, I didn't mention that yet. It's pretty easy to do. You'll just pry up, pull on this portion, it'll lock it up. And then once you slide that over the pedal, there's a button on the top that you'll press. That'll release it, and it's going to clamp on that pedal. Now that arm does move around, and that's going to allow us to get that height exactly where we wanted. So what I like to do is just kind of hold it up to where that cylinder is in line. Pretty straight shot here, and that's where you're going to want to at least adjust the feet to where it's dialed in, or also the seat. Now that red means that there's constant pressure that's being put. So as I push this here, that's too much. What you want is that blinking back and forth. That means it's at a state where we can prep it and make sure that it's set up properly. So now that I have everything kind of in place, we'll take our breakaway plug, put that in, and we'll just push the setup button. It's going to actuate, make sure that it's working properly, and then come to a rest once it's happy. Now you'll see that it does drop down like this. That's kind of the nature of a lot of these portable systems. You might want to adjust it around a little bit more, put some tension on the feet, and really custom dial it in to exactly how you want it. But other than that, it's pretty well set up on this side, but we do want to check to make sure that the RV monitor light is also working. Something else you're going to want to check is once you have it all set up, it's plugged in and it's done, it's run through, you're going to want to pull the breakaway switch to make sure that it is applying the brakes. So as I pull this, I'll take a look inside, make sure that the brake pedal is depressed, and also with that monitor light, it should let us know that it has been pulled. And once you have everything done and you're happy with where your wires are and everything's working properly, something you're going to want to do is where that grommet was that you passed those wires through, Make sure that's put back in place, and you might want to use a little bit of RTV silicone to seal that up. That's going to prevent any water or moisture from getting inside of the Jeep. And that was a look and installation of the Roadmaster 12-volt outlet kit that's rated at 20 amps on a 2023 Jeep Gladiator.